Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. We're going to discuss Aadhaar this time. In fact, we're going to discuss the fracas that happened over last weekend. So, what happened, let me tell you the whole story, is that the government issued a press release for the first time ever from the UIDAI, which gives you your Aadhaar number, and warned of security issues with the Aadhaar card. So, it said number of things, one of them being be careful who you hand it out to, use a masked Aadhaar ID where only the last 4 digits are visible, and within a day after the tweet, when it went viral, the government issued another press release withdrawing the earlier one. So what does that mean? Are there no problems with Aadhaar? Or is the government just burying the problems and saying, don't worry, maintain normal prudence? Now, we're going to analyze that because each one of us needs to have an Aadhaar card, not because we want it, but because the government has told us this is the ultimate national identity, foolproof, with our biometrics, fingerprints, iris scans, and you have to produce it everywhere you go. This is what has been happening since 2018. Suddenly, they're telling you, be careful, don't distribute it at the drop of a hat. What exactly does this mean? How many of you even knew that the Aadhaar is unsafe? Let me actually honestly tell you that if you didn't know, it's because you're not reading enough. Because here at Moneylife, apart from the videos, if you read our magazine articles, which we'll send you a link up there, we have been writing about 200 odd articles on issues with Aadhaar. So now let's discuss what happened over the weekend. So on 27th May, the regional office of the UIDAI, which is the Unique Identification Authority of India, issued a press release warning that sharing photocopies of your Aadhaar with any organization can be misused. First time you're hearing that officially from the government, right? There have been, of course, countless reports of Aadhaar frauds. You may or may not have read them because maybe you don't read the newspapers, right? Now, the government immediately after issued a second press release, like I said earlier. What is the run-up to this? For the last 4 years, you've been distributing the Aadhaar, thinking it's perfectly safe. What convinced you? Possibly in September 2018, when Attorney General K.K. Venugopal famously told a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court, which was hearing a whole lot of protests filed against Aadhaar, that Aadhaar data, and I'm quoting, remains secure behind a complex that has 13 feet high and 5 feet thick walls. Aadhaar is a number online. What does it have to do with walls? Doesn't matter. People saw this as a reflection of how safe it is. Couple of months before that, just before the hearings were to start, R.S. Sharma, chairman of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, went a step ahead. He issued a Twitter challenge, showing you the tweet, where he posted his Aadhaar number. Incidentally, that is illegal to put your number out there. Here the government is saying mask all your numbers, and challenged people to show if they could harm him because his data is out there. So people dug up every bit of his data, his PAN card, someone even sent him a rupee. But Mr. Sharma, being a protected civil servant in a regulatory position, said nobody could harm me. The rest of us, ordinary people, Aam Aadmi, are not so lucky because people have been harmed innumerable times, and that's what we've been saying. But when someone like the chairman of TRAI does this, it creates a false sense of security. There was jingoism on social media, on WhatsApp. People acted as though it was the ultimate sign of patriotism that you believe in your Aadhaar and you're ready to hand it to anybody who asks for it. Schools, colleges, crematoriums, even gated communities, vaccination centers. Somebody just has to say identity, and there you are producing your Aadhaar or maybe carrying photocopies which you are ready to hand out. Suddenly, the UIDAI warning, which I talked about last week, which talks about Aadhaar, suddenly says, don't even give it to hotels. Remember, even before all of this has happened, earlier they said Jan Dhan account, mobile, Jam Trinity, they called it, was enough to open an account. Banks have long ago stopped depending on Aadhaar because there's that much of fraud. They want multiple identification before they open an account. But you didn't know any of that because the government told you it's safe. Now the government suddenly says it's unsafe. What else did the press release say? It says that if you're using a public internet cafe or kiosk happens at airports or your neighborhood internet cafe. To download your e-Aadhaar, make sure that, first of all, don't use it if you can avoid it. Then make sure that all your data is permanently deleted from the computer. Now, if you're allowed to do it, yes, of course, you will do it. If you're using it yourself, that's not how it works, because people who are not very tech savvy, people who don't know how to use email, and there are plenty, lots of people who are poor, who are senior citizens, don't know how to. So what do? They go to a cyber cafe, because the government makes you do everything online today, and it's faster to do it. So they go to a cyber cafe with all their documents, give it to some operator on his computer, and he does the needful, right? Now, how is this person who doesn't even understand enough of technology going to ensure data is deleted? Government is putting the burden on you, saying you were not careful after forcing you into a system which you have no control over. Now they are also asking you to check whether the person who's asking you for Aadhaar has a valid user license from UIDAI. This is not even correct, in fact, because typically if you go to a hotel, what is the easiest ID? People have been giving it everywhere. It's the Aadhaar. If you don't have a driving license, if you don't have a passport, that's what you give it. That's what you give. Now, can you refuse to give it because the hotel is a private party? You cannot, because they won't let you stay there. And the police has asked all hotels, because of incidents of terror, that you need to collect and store a valid ID. Now, like I said, there have been lots of complaints about misuse of Aadhaar. In fact, there's a report from the Center of Internet Society which has documented how data on 130 million Aadhaar numbers has been leaked. This is happening all the time. All kinds of government websites, again, actually believing that it's so safe, have been leaking Aadhaar and personal data, land record centers. All kinds of people have been leaking it regularly. And those who want to avail of subsidies, God help them, they have no control. Government now says you have to check valid user licenses. Are you going to do that at hospitals, crematoriums? I already told you about hotels. They have to collect this data. Hospitals have been collecting it from babies, right? The reality of India is that people do not know enough, but they are using internet cafes. A neighborhood cafe down the road from my house is buzzing with activity these days, because it offers not for you to sit and browse the internet, but offers services. It's become a service center. Passport applications, vaccine appointments, train bookings, Aadhaar updates, MSME registrations. You can do whatever you want. There's a long list of 8 or 10 services that are offered, and that is what is keeping busy. What does that tell you? There are that many people without computers or without knowing how to use these systems and depending on third parties who may or may not misuse their data, but they can't do anything. UIDAI doesn't bother to address any of this. It just says we are withdrawing it. We are withdrawing the earlier press release because there's possibility of misinterpretation. Also insists that the Aadhaar identity authentication ecosystem has adequate features for protecting and safeguarding identity and privacy of an Aadhaar holder. Oh, really? Now, you ask any bank or fintech company and they'll admit that the industry is rampantly using illegal databases that are cobbled together by scraping personal data from social media, from government websites which are leaking them all the time. In fact, in February this year, there was a furor over ghost loans. You may have remembered, we had done videos about it. Dhani Loans and Services had given out loans to people, their credit scores were affected, so the money went to a third party, and the loan was in your name, which you discovered when you looked at why your credit score has dropped. It's crazy. But the reason why it happened was poor KYC and identification issues while onboarding, because the industry wanted to save costs, increase speed, and take shortcuts. Take a look at this little cartoon that I'm showing you. This, in fact, explains what the government did in a nutshell. Aadhaar is voluntary but mandatory. Aadhaar is risky but safe. Share your Aadhaar, but don't let anyone see it. How on earth is an ordinary person supposed to do any of this? Government flip-flop on the misuse of Aadhaar also calls into question several other things. If you are on social media, you would have seen that the police across the country have been issuing regular warnings because they're handling Aadhaar-based fraud. There are gangs of people operating. They use biometrics, which are made by plaster of Paris, a bit of Fevicol. In fact, we at Moneylife Foundation actually have a video, and I'll put the link up here, which show you how easy it is to create fake biometrics, which you can use to, if you have someone's number, you can access the data, especially if you have other details. Phone may be a protection, but who knows when multiple phones are used by people or they're constantly changed. So the Telangana police on 18th March had issued a warning telling people never to share Aadhaar details with anyone and disable your biometric links from your Aadhaar. Again, that requires you to be tech savvy, go to UIDAI or go to a cyber cafe and tell them, humko ye karke do. It doesn't work otherwise. So are they wrong? Delhi police has been warning people since 2018, August 9. Take a look at this tweet that I'm putting out over here. Fraud has been reported from all over the country, from Jharkhand, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, everywhere. Land records have been stolen. All kinds of things have happened in large numbers because, like I said, they're gangs. Now, the most vulnerable people depend on banking correspondence, right? They are armed with biometric Aadhaar-enabled payment systems. And more often than not, the police have found that they collude with criminal gangs to access your data. In fact, V. Anand, the privacy researcher and author, recently tweeted, this is an interesting thing, just read what he says in his tweet. He says there's a market in Varanasi where you get full replicas of fingers and prints encased in plaster of Paris with weatherproof covering so that you can use it for fraud. Sometimes it's not even fraud. People in a family have someone who's not there. There are multiple people onto one ration card and they do it out of need. But this is the system that we have created. The United Progressive Alliance government as well as the NDA has strongly backed Aadhaar, Nandan Nilekani's creation, because the original premise was it's going to give an identity to the poor, it's going to prevent large-scale leak of subsidies and social benefits. So in 2018 August, the government said 120 odd schemes which involve direct benefit transfers and beneficiary payments and subsidies involving a sum of 12,000 crore would only happen online through Aadhaar directly into your linked account. Now, this is where maximum fraud is happening because there are fake accounts, fake Aadhaars, and instead of ensuring there's no leakage, it is directly being rerouted. Scholarship scams have happened, which are all Aadhaar based. You have probably read about it in the papers. As recently as 28th May, the Deccan Herald reported that thousands of bank transactions were bouncing due to issues related to Aadhaar. Now, what was happening here? It was not even a fraud. Our banking systems, farmers' accounts, bank accounts, their mobiles, their Aadhaar is not seamlessly linked. So instead of the money going straight to the account as part of direct benefit transfer, even 4 years after the system was introduced, it is bouncing. The burden on farmers who are not very rich most of the time is crippling. When this happens to India's poorest people who depend on this money for living, for buying their food, it is disastrous. But apparently the government and the UIDAI does not want to admit it. In fact, the payment industry, e-payment industry, which is looking like people like you and me who have computers, multiple tabs, they want this to continue. What they're doing, admittedly, is constantly working to fix vulnerabilities, catch fraudsters, but the police can only do so much. The fraudsters are invariably a jump or two ahead. So why is this problem happening? Why is it that we can't fix it? Why have we come to this stage? Because apparently we cut corners. So same V. Anand that I quoted above, he has identified this. He says the root cause of various screw-ups of UIDAI is that at every stage decisions were driven to keep costs low. Remember, the government said we're giving you Aadhaar free. Now every update and authentication costs money. So it's not all free later, but the UIDAI gives you your number free. So if the card is universal and it's free, obviously there has to be cost cutting to make it viable. So addressing scams and frauds could have been done through smart cards, seeding verification, proper cryptography or consent, Says Anand, these were all avoided to save costs and make it universally easy to use. But now, this makes everybody vulnerable. Multiple entities, both authorized and unauthorized, are easily accessing data because there is a QR code. So you show the card, your QR code can be picked up, all your data is available. And this is not just government agencies. Most of us cannot keep fighting. We are not going to fight to enter every place where you've gone on a holiday. You're not going to argue with your hotel. You want to get onto a train. You're not going to argue when someone asks you for identification. You take the path of least resistance. You show it. If today you even understand that you can go and download an Aadhaar, which has except the last 4 digits, the rest of it mask, there is a good chance you'll still have a fight on your hand, because there are enough of people who report that people don't accept a masked Aadhaar. They say, sorry, ye nahi chalega. So do you stand and argue? Do you carry a government notification? Will the person blocking you understand it and agree? The government is trying to put the burden on us to be careful when the problem is created by the government, the solution is with the government, and we do not even have the tools or the authority to fight back. So ignoring the problem by withdrawing a release doesn't end it. You need to be aware of it. According to me, this is a genie that can't be put back in the bottle, because hopefully many of you have become more aware, are going to be agitated, are going to be alert, and are going to start asking questions to your government. If you agree, raise your voice, subscribe to Moneylife, and please spread this video so that more people become equally aware. Thank you.